All right. So it's an interesting topic what we have got here today. So I think very relevant given this is a startup expo. So what we have focused here is what does it take for startups to go global? And we'll focus more towards US because we are curating something for Indo-American Chamber of Commerce over here. And for all the startup founders here or people looking to go global, I just want to set the context here why it's important. Kind of excellent. We have assimilated excellent panels over here, excellent speakers over here. If you, from a Shivanand perspective, today he's the leader for a $6 billion GCC in India, right? And there's a lot of work they do with startups. So it's important that any startups looking over here, hear through them well and ensure that you leverage the maximum out of this session out here. And similarly, from a Srini perspective, again, drives a consulting company which does a captive, more of a captive center for a $6 billion US organization. You would have heard about ANSR, Zinos, all these like cropped up in the last decade, but Srini with 40 years of experience, he did this way back in 2008 and 9. He worked for 10 years and more than a decade in US, came back and started setting up this, even before the GCC as a service term came in. He did that unknowingly. He didn't know that it's a GCC as a service. They gave it a name, but even before name was given, he's been a pioneer of for setting up something to run a captive center, support center for a $6 billion company. Again, and we have Divyansh, I think the most hot topic, immigrations, legal. I think that's the key, and he is covering for all of that. And then, especially with startups, given the momentum, startups are pushing more on the product side of it. We have Naveen taking care of anything to do with your IP, protect your intellectual properties. So focus and hear them out, and please feel free to connect with them towards the end. There's a lot more that they can give back. So I'll start up with the first question, maybe for Shiva and Srini. There's always a gap. As a GCC leaders, you all are looking for good startups to work with. And as startups, they're looking for the first entry to find a US company that they could work with. And I know from a GCC leader perspective, you all are willing to work with the startups. But there's a misconception from the startups that GCCs would only work with the big SIs or the big fours. But that's not the truth, and that myth has to be broken. So what does it take for startups to crack this first customer globally for them? So, sure.
Yeah, Vijay. I think the key thing which is important to understand, and my perspective would be, is I think you have to understand that when we are trying to work with a startup, we are also trying to take a risk going away from the standard norm which is there, because everybody expects you to go with the top companies and work into it. But so it's not always about the technical capabilities. I think the technical capabilities exist. It's always about as whether you will deliver. It's basically the predictability of the outcome, what will happen is, because it's important to understand that if we are outsourcing, we are taking a risk. And do you understand that if those things don't work, what business outcomes it's going to affect? The second piece, more important, is I would always say is communication, because to build the trust, I think the communication, we always treat it more from updates or weekly reports, but I think the communication has to be more proactive. Is if what is the risk of that thing not happening? It's like, would like to hear from the person with whom we are engaged, rather than trying to anticipate it and know it later. I think that's there. And the third always would be is, will you be the part of like the extension of the team, right? Think it as more of a partner and not rather as a vendor, because that's where the relationship starts changing. Because we have always seen as are we looking at just as an entry to make these things happen, or are you looking at a long-term relationship where you can work with the US teams and start and deliver that? So it's always going to be like the predictability, how much is the predictable, reliable, what kind of communications you do, and who is the, how will you manage the risk? Because everything is not going to go as per what's planned. There is always going to be things which don't go as per the plan. And then do you have that plan A, plan B? Because we always keep on talking of making a Sedu of 100%, but to make that Sedu of 100%, there needs to be a plan A, plan B. And are you ready with the plan A, plan B, and sharing that upfront with the and with the leaders what you are working into the US firms?
Thank you. Your views, Srini.
So you have framed the question well, but probably I want to extend it a little bit. So you have framed it that if startups want to interact or work with GCCs, what should they be doing? Actually, GCCs are nothing but an extension of US entities, right? So I will actually expand your question. If they want to directly go to US and interact with US customers or their representative GCCs, what should they do? And primarily working with a GCC here relatively is easier because we understand Indian mentality or culture, so it's not that difficult. But there are many aspirants here who are starting up. They may find a place in US directly to go there, and they might find a customer there, they might find somebody they want to get started. So probably using my experience, my journey, I would like to bring few points. Probably Shivanand has brought it, but I will polish it a little bit. Nothing new, but polish it a little bit as if you are trying to interact with a US customer. So basically when you are selling something, right, you have a product, you have skill set, you have capabilities. When you go and try to sell, you are primarily focusing on selling your skills, capabilities, or what you can deliver your product. But you are missing one thing. You are a startup, you are a beginner. When somebody is interacting with you, they are not primarily focusing on your skills, capabilities, or product. They are evaluating the risk. What is the risk I'm getting into in dealing with this guy, right? Risk, predictability, is this guy is going to sustainably deliver that? Those are the things primarily going. So when you do your sales pitch or whatever you're trying there, you know for sure that you're good with your skills, your capabilities, your product, but pay attention on how do you address and mitigate their worry about risk, and how do you prove that you can be relied on. And these things, they all come by building trust. And building trust is a very easily said thing, but it's very difficult. So for building trust, typically things would work well for you if you can start on a smaller scale, go with a very manageable, smaller gigs, smaller chunk with the US or GCCs where you can deliver confidently. And generally deliveries, confident deliveries, 3 or 4 deliveries will start building the trust. And one aspect which you have mentioned, communicate clearly, right? Ambiguity is a big killer. If you have ambiguity, you cannot build trust. So whenever you are interacting with US counterparts or GCCs that represent US clients, make sure that your communication is very clear. Make sure that there is no room for ambiguity. Clarity is very much important. Actually, clarity plays a big role, especially in IT projects and all, right? If you get into a project without clarity of what is asked, you will land in a soup. Most of the scope creeps and all will happen because of clarity. That is why Shiva was mentioning that communication is a key. Communication, especially to remove ambiguity, get to the place where everything is black and white and clearly understood, is very, very important. Basically, to sum up, what I would say is your first US customer or GCC is not your big deal. It is going to be your proof of concept. It is your test. So look at it like that and invest your time and process that way. So I don't want to take a long time. I can continue to go on, but these are the basic fundamental things what you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with an US customer or a GCC representing them.
I think it's very clear for all of us here. The 2 things which come out very clearly is trust and clarity. And for startups, for people who are focused, any startup founders here, I think the message is don't oversell, but make sure that you commit to things where you can walk the talk of it. So thank you. I'll come to the next question to Divyansh. you've been the expert, right, in terms of today the global mobility challenge, the immigration challenges. But as startups, when they start something over here, when they scale up, maybe in the first year or first 18 months, there is a need for them to put their delivery team, their sales team, their client relations team. What is how do you define a path for them? What should they do to ensure that these gaps or these challenges are met for them?
So honestly, Vijay, I come across that question way too often, especially from founders which I've worked closely with. So what I've seen is actually I want to add something to what Shivanand and Srini have already mentioned. I think everybody talked about the trust, and especially when it comes to startup founders, everybody focuses on the product market fit. So when it comes to US, I think we can summarize in saying that it's not just a product market fit what you're looking for, but also a trust market fit. Because let's say whether it's an employer or a team who is sitting 13 time zones away from you, what do they know about you? So communication does play an important role. That's obviously have already been addressed. But it's everything around trust. Especially in Bangalore, what I've seen with founders focus way too much around product. They do keep coming with again and again. They rework on their product. They think product is a problem where they don't understand that communication could also be the issue. Answering your question, honestly, it's nearly impossible to sum up the entire immigration pathways for somebody. But even if somebody has to answer that, I mean, the reason is very important to understand. So let's say if there is a startup founder who is just starting right now, and he's still trying to find the product market fit, trying to understand the right audience for it, he can even do that on a visitor visa, which is a B1, B2 visa. He can apply for that, visit the country, understand the audience, and then just go with it. Or, I mean, since apart from that, like US doesn't offer anything like startup visa. So, I mean, there are certain other pathways like L1 visa, O1 visa, but there's a better structure needed to that. I mean, if somebody is looking on a long term for this kind of services, what they can do is they can probably set up an organization in US. It can be a parent entity or it could be a subsidiary entity of an Indian company. And then depending whether you have an LLC over there or C corporation, you can apply for an intra-company transfer, which is the L1 visa. Then obviously, since everybody knows about H1B visa, it's always been in the news for so long. I mean, the problem is also one thing that people, since there is limited knowledge and limited information, people often depend on the H1B visa way too much. I mean, there are extraordinary ability visa, which is an O1 visa, there is L1 visa. These are also some of the visas which have no cap, which has no minimum requirement needed. I mean, so with the right guidance, definitely people can choose these as an options as well. Apart from this, I mean, I don't want to take much time, but there are two additional entry points which a lot of people don't know is an E2 treaty. So it's not honestly possible for Indian passport holders to go for E2 treaty because India doesn't have a commerce treaty signed with US. But then there are an alternative hacks to it. I mean, Grenada and Turkey has citizenship by investment programs and they have a treaty with the US. So that opens a route definitely for Indians to go for it. And there is an additional pathway like an international entrepreneurial rule. That is again something. So if you are looking for an investment from US VC firm, definitely you can even apply for that. So these are just some of the pathways anybody can look for if they're planning to move to US or set up a team or have a partial team over there. It all depends on what exactly is your primary, responsibility or a primary requirement over there.
Thank you, Divyansh. I think that's a good thing, and it just reminded there is two individuals here who are enabling that, moving into US or being part of those delegations. I think one is Amrita, who drives it as part of IACC, and then there is Jitika, who kind of, from a Fairfax County perspective, there's a lot of programs that she runs which enables startups to move in there, go in there and visit there. So please feel free to, any startup founders here, feel free to get in touch with Jitika or Amrita if you're looking at avenues to make that path.
Vijay, I have a side note to observe on this. you're talking about resources, right? So one thing I wanted to tell the startup people here, I had friends who tried to do startups and all, but primarily, unless you have a strong US story to tell, sell, or a US customer, trying to staff immediately in US is not a very good idea. Without a business that is a pipeline, if you start putting people, your people will become very quickly disheartened if business is not coming and all of that. So if there is a choice, if you have to start putting people there, what you have to do is at the beginning, don't try to put your best engineers there. All you need is a good communicator who can build trust, who can build relations, who can build pipelines. Probably one guy could do, or even like Divyansh mentioned, that you can make trips, make sure that you have the connect, but don't start putting many people in the beginning. So primarily what you need is a good communicator, and then probably if you start growing, then you need somebody who can troubleshoot and de-escalate, escalation manager guy. As things ramp up, then you can start thinking of your engineers and the other people. Staffing has to be done very carefully. Of course, the process is very daunting, so you are worried how much time it takes for getting these visas, this, that, and then you start staffing. But business, primary business, what you are going to get, you keep that in mind and do your staffing.
Thank you, Srini. That's great balanced insights what you're sharing. I'll come back to Naveen. So Naveen, I know you've been part of an organization where you all have handled about close to 5,000 patents, IPs, and currently working with close to 25 technology companies that you all support. There's always this rush as a startup. You're more focused on scaling up your business to grow, scale, but you keep, you set aside or you miss to protect your IP. What is the real cost of ignoring it, or what would be your advice to all the startup founders here in terms of protecting your IP?
So Vijay, thanks for asking this question. I think we all know very well that initial focus of a startup is to expand their business or try to find or come out with a solution for the problem which they intend to. And never a goal for a startup is that they want to create an IP around the technology. Never ever. So that's a secondary or even the third priority for them, or the last priority for them. What we have seen, at least being in Bangalore, the advantage what we get is that to interact with a lot of startups. So when the startups come into us and when they talk to us, what we see is that often that they are too late. So probably they are coming to us or talking about IP when such questions were asked when they want to go to some other country, or when they are looking for a VC, or so they to go for fundraising project. I think that's when they hear about this and they come to us talking about, okay, what is that we can do. By that time, a lot of time would have lapsed, and a lot of IP which could have been protected, they would have lost. So my advice would be that at least for the people who are working on startup, I understand totally that the priorities are different initially for the startup to do. But at least the entrepreneurs or the founders should dedicate some time, a little time at least at the beginning, when they believe that they are trying to resolve a problem. So whenever they're trying to resolve a problem, is there any IP can I protect from here, from this? Or if they're coming out with a product, again the question should come to in their mind is that, is there any IP I can protect? I don't think that's going to cost them more. I don't think that's going to cost them a lot. Being in a place like Bangalore or even in India, the cost of an IP attorney is nothing when you're going for an advice. If you do the same thing when you're going to US or any European countries, every hour gets charged when you're talking to them. But at least in India, you're fortunate that you have people who are experienced in that, where the founders don't have idea or they don't even have to scratch their head in that particular part because there's so many 100 things they need to focus on. Just talk to them. Whenever you look into, just talk to them, not telling that, can I get a patent to it? No, that shouldn't be the question. The question should be, how do I strategize my IP, provided this is what I'm trying to do in my startup, the problem what you're trying to address or what a solution you're coming to. So the question should be very different there. So when you put that right question to the IP authority, so they are the one who are going to guide you where are the pit stops, where you need to flag things, get the right expert to see where it is, and also will help you to put the right contracts and agreements in place. That's the next crucial thing. What we have seen is that a lot of people who have joined or created IP in a startup environment are not there with them at all when they try to protect it. So the legal hurdle is a lot more. So especially people who want to invest with a startup, what they want to see is that what is the market and is that market is available only for me. Because tomorrow you come out with a solution, launch a product in the market, there are so many big brands there who are working in a similar area who can offer that solution in a much better way or brand it in a really nice way so that people would like to buy the solution from the right brands and not from a newcomer. So any investor who comes to you says that, how have you protected that market for me? You can only do that if you have IP around it. So that's the reason, that's the way you can create that monopoly, and that way you assure the investor that this market is explicitly available for this particular solution. No one else, even if they intend to come in, they cannot come in because you are protected through IP. So that assurance, and also the next thing, the biggest thing what other people ask is the documentation part. Are the proper assignments in place? Have you have the proper IP certification in place? Have you done proper contract signed when you're trying to get some solution from other consultants? So these are the things what they want to know because they want to feel safe when they want to invest money with you. I think these are something which you can keep a knob on. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Naveen. I think it makes...
One thing, Vijay, I would like to add, and I think you spoke about from an investor's perspective, but I would like to speak about from a GCC or a US company perspective. If you are a startup and your first customer is one of the GCC or US, and you're working a project with them, I think they would like to know what, if they are investing something, you're doing a product or implementing a product, customizing it, what is the IP you have and what is the IP they have, because it is always critical to know upfront if there is a situation where things go wrong. I think companies like us would say is like, I have invested, I need all that thing to be mine. And if you are not clear at that stage, it gets into a different kind of discussion. So companies would like to know as what is your protected IP. And today in the AI world, I think companies are trying to be much more, want to understand upfront is how is this product developed, what is an AI thing being used, because the last thing we want is the code or something is outside in the AI world and it's being used for it. So I think it's critical that IP is not an afterthought, but it's more like an hygiene factor which needs to be in the development.
And I just wanted to add 2 points. One is typically when we get into master service agreements with startups, right? So whatever project we give as part of the project, whatever is developed, the intellectual property will belong to the US client or the GCC. If you already protect whatever you have done or whatever you have as an IP, then that clause will not work. We cannot put that. So basically whatever work you have done at one place, you can reuse it and repurpose it. And the other point which we were talking is about trust, right? Various ways of gaining trust. One of the ways of gaining trust is IP. If your product or whatever your idea, your design already has an IP, it adds to trust. It's a trust adding factor. So not only legal requirements, your commercial requirement, adding trust, lot of dimensions to IP.
Sure. I think this is an interesting question, I guess, because we saw a lot of insights and extended answers from Naveen. If you were thinking why he went this far or this long in answering that, because there's a lot of cost which comes into it if you ignore it. So thanks, Naveen. There's another trend that we are seeing. I think this question is, maybe I'll start off with Divyansh, but this is applicable for all of us over here. The recent startups, what we are noticing from a startups perspective is most of these startups, majority of them are venturing into the product space, and the service space is slowly it's coming down. Like, do you see that trend, Divyansh, where because when the startups are more growing on the services space, there's a lot of needs from an immigration perspective kicks in. But with product space, do you see that it makes it easy for organizations like you to, because they could still deliver a lot from a product perspective being over here. So it's more of startups being on the product space or services space. What's your view on that?
So honestly, Vijay, I slightly disagree with that because, so I mean, service sector in itself has grown to a significant point that now there is a category of service as a product. So what we are seeing is a lot of times there are services, you're providing services itself, but now it is being taken like a product, and that's why it does look like that there are more products in the market and service industry is dying, which is, I think it's just the ambiguity over there. Now coming to the service part, especially if we talk about the US market, I mean, I think we all know so many players are there who already build SaaS product, like service as a software. I mean, everything is about service, right? There in India, a lot of founders aspire to build products for the US market. It could be due to any reason, due to the paying capacity or anything like that. There are a lot of D2C companies also which have recently come into the picture who are building primarily. So once they've got a product market fit in India, now they want to expand and they want to do business in the US side as well. So I mean, definitely. So what I have been a firm believer that in India, you can set up your engineering team. So I say that India builds, US sells. You can always have your engineering team, everything over here. You can take up the hard work. You don't have to deploy people over there. And you can always put people in sales, business, customer experience, all those people who will directly interact with the customer. It will help you in learning the real life challenges and the scenarios over there. And again, we can always choose the pathways which I've discussed earlier. And I think this would be a right strategy. I mean, there are innumerable companies which we know. I mean, so in India, there are AI companies currently being built only with the target audience being considered as US. So I think this would be a right pathway for them.
Thank you. That's excellent insight. So Shiva and Srini, like, I know you all are continuously looking for partners. Like, do you see more partners coming in on the product side or on the services side of late, from a startup's perspective?
My personal experience is I am in a field specific to information technology, right? Mostly I interact with service guys, right? Product. Generally, people, they try to go to US. They don't come through GCCs for products. But my take on this or my observation is generally selling a product is much difficult. Sometimes if you are having difficulty in selling a product, service sales is relatively easier. You can get a small chunk. There is no small chunk in product, but in service you can start small chunk. That would be your gateway or entry interaction with a US client. You can start building rapport, and then sometimes, as he mentioned, services can be, as it grows, it can be made into a product and you sold. So it is a service could be a launch pad for product sales. It could be a launch pad for entry or gaining a customer. So look at services as a backup when you are finding it difficult with your product. If you can couple your product with service, then try to launch your service first and then go to product. Are my observations. But I don't know whether I came close to your question or I went in a tangent.
No, that was close from IT perspective. I'll let Shiva answer, because Shiva, I know you deal with both. As a leader, you have both the manufacturing side of it to look at it, and then you have the IT side of it to look at it. Do you see a mix of products and services from a startups coming in, or?
Yeah, I think we see a mix. I would say, like, from an IT or GCC perspective, I think it is more of service-based kind of things. Where we see more of it, because if you look at product from an IT standpoint, and like an enterprise like us, we would like to see whether we have a global and product which can work in. But in a manufacturing sector, what we are seeing is, especially on things like what you have smart factory or other things which are coming in, data analytics, computer vision, we are looking at products to come in and help in, because services there doesn't work. You want something to come in and fit in to help you and then scale, because you would. So I see that mix is in manufacturing, we look more from a product which can help us, we can put it into our process systems. And from a GCC standpoint, I think we look at more from a services standpoint, how we can do it. So it's a mix of both.
Thank you. I'm not sure how much time we have, but I'll come to the last question here. Let's say if all four of you all sit on the other side and where the startup founders are at, what is it that one thing that you all will do to make an impact to go global? Maybe I'll start with, I'll leave it to you all, one of you all could start with it. Just one thing which you will do to make a global impact as a startup founder, if you are a startup founder.
I'll start with that. Honestly, I don't think there is a silver bullet solution which solves everything. But there are certain things which are top in my mind. Is like, first of all, you should keep yourself updated on the news because the immigration policies keep on changing, especially when it's US. Second thing I would say is that plan your immigration well in advance. Understand what's your requirement, and accordingly you can plan in advance. Do not wait. Do not park it for something on the later side so that you are not in a trouble. It's not something you have to look at the later end. And be in touch with founders who have already built that journey. You will get a lot of help. You don't know what are the challenges you will come across in later side. There are certain things which I think we have already come across and we have tried to solve. So that makes your journey slightly easier. So that is all I think I can guide.
Yeah, I would say like, I know we talk about customer, client. If you have, I think you focus on that one customer, one client to make a champion, your champion or your advocate. Because I think that one champion, one advocate in different forums would be your person who would talk about it. Because typically when you're dealing with new technologies and all, I think everybody's trying to know from the other one is saying that, have you worked with someone who can help us to solve this problem? And if you have that champion, he can put a word or be your advocate. I think that's the one focus area I would say as a startup founder. Pick one client, one customer, and make him the champion. Let him be your storyteller.
Sure, thank you.
Primarily, I can speak from a service industry, right? So if you're starting up something and you got your first US customer, you will be under tremendous pressure to close it, right? And the typical mistakes probably I might have done in my past, which I may avoid to get better, is in the anxiety to capture that even without understanding fully what is the ask, saying yes, and then getting into without clarity and baad mein dekh lenge, looking for some flexibility, that's going to burn you a big time. So I would avoid that. Make sure that you're clearly aligned. There is no ambiguity, clarity. Don't say yes when you don't understand the ask. Clearly ask, get aligned, then proceed. Don't rush just because you have something. If you botch it up, then you lost your first client, you lost everything. So that is going to be the end of the story. So be careful before you say yes. Make sure you understand what the ask is, then proceed with clarity. That's what I would do if I start fresh.
Sure, thank you, Srini.
So, being an IP attorney here, though I'll be sitting on the other side, what I would suggest or I would do is that I would like to block my ideas and delay my expenses. That's a strategy I would like to look for, so that I know that how important my IP is, so that I will do it today, but not with the cost of huge expense, because I have a lot of things to do and money is really important for me right now. I'll delay that expense a little bit more, as much as possible, but I'll still protect my idea. So that's the way I would look for.
Sure, thank you. I think in the interest of the time, I'll just summarize. We'll close this session. I'm sure this was not at a 30,000 feet level. It was some deep insights over here. Next thing that I see is mistakes cost money. I think that's a very important point that Naveen brought up. And going global is not, for startups, going global is not just about fundraising. It's about trust, clarity, the IP, legal. All these are key aspects that we should not ignore. And Thank you. Thank you all for being such a wonderful panel and the great insights. And thank you all.
The knowledge partner for today's event, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce.